Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, I'm GC Smith and welcome to a World of Warcraft Legion video. And today we're going to be talking about alts, or more importantly, alt-friendly content. If you've been playing World of Warcraft in recent era, you have no doubt come across the fact that content has gotten a whole lot more alt-friendly. But what I mean by this is that content has gotten easier for your alternate characters to either catch up with, either through catch-up mechanics, or because the content has been nerfed so much so as to allow alts to catch up with it. And sometimes this is good, having ways to catch up with you have your alts catch up with your main, so they never lag extremely far behind, making the alternate characters useful for guild progress, is an incredibly good idea. However, having the alt catch-up mechanics basically remove content from your main characters is extremely bad, and that's what I want to talk about today. You see, while there has been cases in the past where Blizzard have tried to make content easier for alts to catch up with, for example, the reputation grinds in Miss Pandaria, which once you got exalted with a faction on one character, all your other characters got a 100% boost to gaining reputation with that same faction, which I thought was an amazing way of allowing catch-up. It didn't remove content from your main character, didn't nerf the content for your main character in any meaningful way, but allows your alternate characters to catch up, which is extremely good at twice the speed. And again, still gives them content because they don't remove that content just from them either. So it gives you more to play the game. However, there's already complaints about content in World of Warcraft Legion concerning the Suramar zone, a massive zone of pure story, in which case people are already complaining about how unfriendly it is for their alts, and that's kind of sad that people are making that kind of complaint. This is a zone where people have been running about lack of content, and this is a max level zone in which the only thing to do is max level content in terms of story, adding a bit more to the World of Warcraft. And I really love the idea of this zone, but what I'm really afraid of is the possibility that this zone could itself end up being nerfed or changed or affected in some way to remove its grandness, to help those who would rather just play as many characters as possible and care little for the story or actual gameplay available in World of Warcraft. In fact, I would argue that alt-friendliness in such a way that has removed content from your main characters is something that's driven players away from the game. There are players who just want to play one character or one class, and when there's nothing for them to do on that one character, they quit. They run out of things to do, they get bored, they quit. Not everyone wants to play alts or feels like playing alts is a good idea, and as such, forcing them down that path is kind of a bad thing. But Warlords of Draenor has forced that upon people. In fact, personally, I have never had a alt for anything other than replacing my main, ever. Like before Warlords of Draenor. In no previous expansion have I leveled a character to max level simply to have something else to do. I've never really particularly found leveling to be the best or most enjoyable experience, especially once I've done the zone a couple of times. Yeah, sure, first time through leveling, I enjoy it. I love seeing the story of the zones and I'll take my time going through it. But after that, I just want to level up as quickly as possible. And that's one of the reasons I actually really love things like heirlooms and experience bonuses myself, because it helps me get characters up to max level quickly, but not so quickly as to actually remove content from me. Because at the end of the day, leveling alts is still something I find as content. More importantly, leveling my alt allows me to actually learn how to play that character or class if I've not really played them before, which is, again, something else I really enjoy learning to do. It allows me to at least be semi-competent when it comes to doing anything with that character in the future. If case I ever wanted to make them my main or something. But there has been a lot of ways in recent era where alt-friendliness has removed content from the main character place, such as making the content either really, really short, in which case your character can do it really, really quickly, and then on your main, just so they can allow your ult to catch up really quickly, or by removing content from your main entirely in the form of ult catching up. And I am, of course, in this way talking about Timeless Isle or Tannan Jungle. Now, both of these zones have been highly... Well, I guess Timeless Isle was considered quite good because it came at the end of a 3-tiered expansion, during which you've already had to, I think, do previous tiers in some amounts to get gear and catch up and long legendary quest chains and that kind of thing, and replaced the need to do some of that content. And for, I guess, a large amount of the player base at the time, that was considered good. Or maybe it was just because it was an island of content for older players, who had their mains who had done that. Or I'm not really sure on what metric it was extremely popular. And Tannan Jungle was done on the same kind of design principle. But in my opinion, Tannan Jungle has been a mixed bag of stuff, really. Tannan Jungle, from a main character's perspective, has been fairly good on the basis that I'd already done previous tiers worth of content. Having it be new content to me was great. However, if I was a brand new character or a returning player who hadn't done all the previous content, I would be annoyed. You see, Tannan Jungle removes 2 raid instances from my content pool. And yes, I can pug them, but it's unlikely you'll find a guild that's willing to progress now up through Heimel and Blackrock Foundry. Why would they when, if they want to progress through, say, Mythic Hellfire Citadel, it's far quicker for them to make that kind of progress through gearing up in Tannan Jungle and then going straight into the raid instance and expecting you to pug like normal in heroic mode in your own free time. And that's kind of sad. I think one of the big draws in certain cases to the Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King content, and why they had so many subs, was that raid tiers were always viable. Like, they were always considered content. Even 6 months before Wrath of the Lich King, there were still guilds that were forming and doing Karazhan for the first time, or people that had kind of remade their characters, remade guilds, that kind of stuff, and were having to go through maybe Karazhan for themselves for the first time, for like the 6th or 7th time, or however it had been, but they were taking groups of quite a large amount of them where they'd not done Karazhan before. And had there been a huge catch-up mechanic, even at Tier 6's first release, to get you up to that level of content, you would have ignored Tier 4 and 5, both of which were actually quite enjoyable experiences and a lot of content to progress through. And I think that World of Warcraft would be a lot less punishing in terms of its content drought if that was the case. In fact, I would argue that we never really moaned about the content drought at the end of Burning Crusade into Wrath of the Lich King, because there wasn't really much of one. And I'd argue that was because if you were leveling up ults or leveling up mains or whatever, you went through all the previous tiers of raids to get them up to the same level. And while I agree that being forced to take any ult character up 3 previous tiers of raiding to get to the current tier may be bad, it could either be A, the lesser of 2 evils, or B, there could be alternate ways of allowing you to catch up without removing content from main characters, which is what zones like Tannan Jungle allow to happen. They, like I say, I don't want to reiterate it too much, but they do remove the need to do raid tiers on your main if you're a new or returning player, and in that case, stop you seeing content. The only reason to do the other dungeons right now is Mythic Black Hand for the Mount, which, by the way, is a lot easier now with all the gear from Hellfire Citadel, or to do the Legendary Quest Chain, which you're just going to pug in looking for raid. Sure, you will see a few people that do Blackrock Foundry and Heimel runs. A lot of that may be to do with more achievement-based things or transmog-based things. Almost none of it is to do with progress. There is virtually no reason to do it for progress in looking for group, outside of looking for raid, because Tannan Jungle just gives you better gear quicker and in less difficulty. So why would you go the other path? And my solution personally, if you were to ask me for allowing alts to catch up to your mains in terms of raiding, is make tier tokens bind on account. That way, once all the mains in the raid are geared up, you can start giving it to players, and they'd have a use for them for their alts. In addition to the whole lottery with Warforged or upgraded and gem sockets and all that crazy thing, you'd have the ability to send them to your alts, and your alts would therefore be able to skip all the leveling process of previous tiers. That's one way to do it, in a way that doesn't remove content from your mains, which means you would still have new guilds now forming in order to do previous content. And you could join maybe those kind of guilds if you had already done that content, as you were overgeared, you'd help the guild out a bit, and it might be a way to find access to guilds for players who may not be as good, or if guilds are broken up, it might be a way to get into guilds a bit more easier. I personally think that would be a lot healthier for the game if you had to go through previous tiers. In fact, at the end of Wrath for Lich King, when they released, even at the end, when they released Trial of Crusader, and the dungeons there basically removed even Ulduar from the raid scene, I was kind of annoyed. I kind of taken a break and come back, and even Trial of Crusader had only been out for a very short period of time. I still wanted to go back and complete Ulduar. Guess what? I couldn't find a group for it, because Ulduar wasn't really an easy to pug raid, even at that time, or the pugs had really high gear score requirements, which I didn't meet necessarily, and the Trial of Crusader kind of made going back pointless beyond the experience, and the experience isn't the same when you overgear the dungeon or the raid. So I personally, again, I really wish or hope that content like Suramar doesn't get nerfed for our mains. I really want that epic experience, but more importantly, I hope they don't just remove the need to do previous raid tiers in Legion. I like the idea that if they're expecting a huge group of returning players, especially trickling in over the expansion, those new players get to see the whole content that Legion has to offer, not just one raid tier towards the end. That's kind of a sad thing if that happens. And I do think that progressing through all the previous raid tiers helps the community stay around when it comes to the content drought at the end of the year. Again, there was about a year or so between 2.4 and in my experience there was like a year's content drought between 2.4 and Wrath of the Lich King, but no one really cared that much, because if you were a less than pro player, if you were like what would be considered now, I guess, a normal or even just a heroic level raider, you went through slowly. It took you weeks to progress from one tier to the next, or months even, and so you'd be behind. And the tier 6 level players, the ones raiding through, had a raid that could be of equal difficulty for their content thing, but more importantly, their ult still had content to do that was reasonable difficulty. Their ults didn't just skip everything. And while I do think having ways for your ults to catch up is good, I still don't think it should be as automatic as just skipping everything. And yeah, that's basically it. I do believe that having content too ult friendly is just bad for the game. Hopefully you guys agree with me, but if not, I understand that completely. I understand that if you do want to go through content and catch up quickly if you're a new player, that's fine. That's a reasonable opinion to hold. I don't have a problem with you holding that opinion. I don't agree with you, but I can see why you would hold that opinion. I just think that that kind of opinion may just be bad for the long-term health of the game. Personally, we know sub numbers started dropping off after Wrath of the Lich King, Cataclysm of Pandaria, and while I know a lot of that is to do with lack of content, or the content being bad, or whatever, I do think that there'd be a lot more content to do if previous raids were still viable. If people that were newer or less experienced were still raiding through Highmore and Blackwall Foundry, if they just joined the game, maybe there wouldn't be so many people leaving. Maybe they'd stay for a while and see there's actually a lot more content to do. Maybe it would help. I don't know. But it's something for Blizzard to consider in helping their sub numbers. So hopefully this video gets out and about, not that I'm expecting it to. So thank you very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.